talked about the saddle and your experiences with it and what we're trying to do here for Pump Jack to keep him on the road and keep him sound for you. Let's go through and do a general overview of that and explain it to people of what we deal with and why we do it. The first thing of this is the placement of the saddle we've talked about. The most important thing we see is that most saddles are sat too far forward. A lot of people there's a lot of theories that get it up on his shoulder because he carries more weight on his front end. Get it off his kidneys. And to talk both of them, people put that saddle on that shoulder and it interferes with his structure, and we'll talk about that, and it actually changes the way he moves and breaks his body down. People talk about being getting on their kidneys. Well, and their kidneys are hanging below the on a diaphragm below the spine, and the spine, the fingers of the spine are at least a few inches high, and that kidney's probably 8 to 10 inches below the surface. Most of the soreness people do see back there is actually muscle related from what happens at the front of the saddle. And that's what we showed, the same thing with him too. So from there, we look at this saddle is set further back. We'll show you where most people would have it. Most saddles out there are a full rigging, which is here, and a majority of them in the rodeo arena especially are 7/8, which actually puts that saddle sitting right there. To give you an idea, the back of his shoulder is here. So he has, 3-4 inches of tree sitting on top of his shoulder. Every time he takes a step, he's trying to pass that shoulder underneath that tree, and to get away from that, he draws his shoulders in, and he hollers his back out, rotates his pelvis forward, and raises his head, and puts him in the total unnatural stance that we want him to be in, to be collected up and running or turning or whatever event we're in. And from there, because his muscle's not working normally, it actually starts breaking his body down, which leads to everything we deal with, in our horses. So what we're doing with this is letting you put that saddle behind his shoulder and then move that cinch to his heart girth and let him cinch up. Of course, if your cinch is back here, and it's gonna make its way to the heart girth, and that saddle's gonna move correspondingly to it. So this lets you do both in one. That's where we're at with that. Let's take the pad off him and go through a little bit more. I hope that is clear enough. When we're fitting a saddle, and what we've done is we like to take the pad off. You want to see what the saddle does on the horse by itself. The pad, just is the space between it, takes the sweat away. That's about what its good use should be. You want to have a little bit of freedom in here. You don't want to have the very front point of that bar jamming in that shoulder. Now, here's the back of his shoulder. The back of the shoulder is in here where my thumb is, and you can run off that bone and find it, okay? And then close your hand on it, okay?
And then just pull.
Then you pull that saddle up, and the front of the concho should stay behind that shoulder.
And most saddles will fit. It looks funny because when you do that, just like he said with that D, it's going to move way back.
It's usually sitting.
And your cinch is going to be clear back here, so it does look funny. With my other saddle, it looked funnier than heck. But with this saddle, he makes that moves up.
Yep.
And you're right there normal.
Okay. Now, from there, the first thing we want to do is push down on that horn. There's a little bit of movement in that, and with this horse, he's come back from a long way. He's put a lot of weight back on his muscle the last couple of months with it starting to build back up from having a saddle on that fits him. So we're gonna, for temporarily, he'll probably have a little shim in here, a little artificial muscle build up to get him through to hopefully around the 4th of July run, and then he'll be out of it. But it's definitely not a whole big hole in here. It's just a little bit of adjustment he needs. From there, by putting your hand up underneath the tree and feeling along here, and for everyone, not just up in here, but the tree's actually up. Follow them conchos round about an inch out from them, and then you'll follow that seat line where if there was a padded seat of the B up around here, and follow conchos round. And that's where your seat is, and where your tree is, and you need to have your hand up underneath that to feel the weight that it's putting on there. And what you're looking for is an even pressure feeling the whole way along. Most of your issues occur from the fender to here. 95% of saddle fitting issues are in there. The reason why, that is where the tree goes from being flat on his back to transitioning into the shoulder. And so when it's sitting flat on his back, it's just flat on flat. Up in this area, it's a wedge. It's triangle on triangle, for such of a lack of a better word. And that's why most issues happen. Of course, bigger issues happen because they're making a lot of saddles to fit that narrow, high-withered horse. This horse should naturally be big, and that's why we're getting him in a bigger saddle.
Exactly.
So as we feel back through here, and we feel for an even contact, we know what we're looking for. No tight spots, and that's what we're looking for. Like I said, we're going to temporarily shim and hold that front of that saddle up to give him a few more weeks. He's just moved in a 1/2 inch wider saddle.
Yep.
So big move for this horse. Okay, Dean, we've looked at the saddle on him. Let's, step it back a stage, and this is what we try to get everyone back to, is to actually get to looking at your horse and work out how he should be compared to how he is. We get real used to seeing, what we call a good wither. It's a big high wither, what we got to back up and realise is that high concave wither is man-made. It's not part of the animal. Yep. When he was a 2-year-old, he was pretty round-backed. His shoulders stuck out, and they were very definite. And the more he's rode in a saddle that don't fit him, and he started to change his body, the more it changes. And we need to look at, okay, we're now trying to fit an animal that's already got some damage to and has changed his natural stance, instead of getting him back to how he should be, or keeping him in that state to start with. So some of the telltale signs are, of course, this is usually this will become a dished-in area compared to the rest of him. And the further back you look on this muscle, and this is your longissimus muscle, or for everyone that's more common with it, this is your back strap for everyone that's a hunter.
Yeah.
This is the main back strap muscle. And if you look, the further back down that you're looking, you'll see where he's nice and round. And the further forward you get, well, it starts flattening out and dishing in. The reason that is because this is the first area that gets damaged. So it starts here, and then it starts gradually working its way back through there till you end up with a horse with nothing left.
Yeah.
So if you can look back and he's still real round here, you go, okay, that's his natural shape. This is what I should be looking at. This part in here is still a little bit hollow. It's not near where we had on him.
Yep.
So I may have to shim this up or pad him a little different here to make him big enough to hold the saddle for sake. Yeah. Another telltale of that is you'll see a horse that's really pulled down here. This horse he's not. And that's a lot of muscle drawn down and pulled tight. His shoulder's sticking out here now, where you can actually see the shape. When we started with him, everything was pulled in so tight. It was just a ski slope all the way to the top. He had no definition. Yep. One thing, we laughed about his head and kind of how he looked. Well, in the couple of months, his neck's grown out so big, his head's looking smaller. And it wasn't that his head's so big, it's his neck was so small and his body was out of proportion.
Yep.
We'll go to his back end, and something we talk about is that tail sticking. That tail's become the highest point out of him. Well, it's more of a lacquer that this isn't rounded up because his hamstrings and everything's pulled so tight. These some things to looking at, and and I'm sure he didn't start off that way. As a colt getting rode. And if we can get everything back right on him, he'll be good. We talked before about him rotating his pelvis forward. Well, that also trails his hocks out behind him and makes it hard for him to collect.
Well, when he first started, he was really just from that saddle. It's starting to fill out right there. I mean, remember that used to stick up a little ways.
So that's and that until you get to that point and looking at it, you got to realize get back to the symptom. Get away from the symptoms and get back to the cause. What should my horse look like?
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're chasing yourself to oblivion for the 15 years you're on him.
Yeah.
The part of looking back at this horse and working out how he should look. And we started this guy off in a 7. Of course, it was too big in the front, so it wants to fall down. And the worst thing, he goes, man, it don't fit. Well, it don't fit him here, but this part don't belong to him. We've made that, so we're going to pad that up and make this part of the back bigger so it matches in with the rest. And the 7 worked on him. Well, it worked on him for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
He's come back. We're moving this to a 7.5 inch wide gullet. If this horse stays on track, he's possibly going to outgrow that by the time we get to Vegas and be as big as he should be. We're going to get him back to where he should be, and then he'll be on a low maintenance program. Right now, he's on a rebuilding program.
Yep.
So we're kind of stuck in an area. It takes a little bit of learning, and but it is very common sense. And as we tell everyone gets in this deal, this ain't a force feed or force sell.
Yeah.
It's got to make common sense, because you as the competitor has got to be able to be on the road and be able to understand your horse's back and learn this to take control. So if something goes wrong with him and you're on the other side of the country, you can change the way you're padding, change the way you're saddling to keep him right, keep winning money off him.
I just remember you telling me that was the main thing that I really remember when I first come here. Is like, your horse is not going to fit my saddle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And it sounds it sounds corny.
Yeah, it does. You know, the first time you hear that, you're like, well, son of a buck, why can't you build a saddle to fit my horse?
Yeah.
And really, he is. He's going to build a saddle. You were building a saddle to, you want him to, you got to keep building your saddle so it's, like when he first trashed out, he was better now. But when he was first trashed out, we could have put a 6 3/4 you said on there, and it would have fit him perfect. But now, it'd be extremely tight, and then we'd be re-hurting him. You know.
Well, and like you said, you know, if we build a saddle to fit him that day, we fitted a sore horse in a sore state, and we trapped him in that state. You know, and so you've got to, you know, look into your, you know, into the future as such, and this is how he should be. Okay, we're going to build to that. And that's why I said you start tracking your way down your back and go, okay, this is still good and this looks normal. You know, if it fits him under here and it's too big here, I'll pad that up, and then I can make it fit him all round.
Exactly.
You kind of got a nearly crystal ball through the first couple of months looking at this. You know, best case, we don't trash him out to start with. We don't have to deal with what we're dealing with in this generation of horses.
Could have just put the saddle on right away.
It would have fitted him right out.
He's old enough where he was, and it wasn't nobody's fault. And heck, they were just like me. They just put a saddle on. Yeah. You know, because they fit them just by putting the hand under there, you know, instead of putting your hand under here. Yeah. And heck, it's just, until you know any better, you don't really change, you know.
Of course, our main goal out of this is to give it to where, you know, you are confident your saddle fits, you do know what's going, and you do know every time you back him in the back of the box, he's going to be solid, consistent, and he's going to stand up and, you know, and do what his job is and run hard. You know, that's what we're both looking for.
Exactly. You know, these horses, I know people talk about them as a tool, you know, but these horses to me they are a tool, but in a way, you know, this ain't a pipe wrench. I'm not going to break him and throw him away, you know. I mean, these horses make a living for me, feed my kids, keep my wife, you know, in a house, you know. I mean, my wife works and stuff, but she treats these horses as good as I do, you know. She dang sure wants them looking good, feeling good, and it makes a lot. That's why we got these saddles, because these saddles are fitting them good, and we want them to stay working good, you know. We want them to work all the time, not just, you know, have them spurts where they work all the time. And man, I really think, you know, a horse, the great horses, you don't treat them like a tool, you treat them like your friend, you know. I mean, you wouldn't treat your friend like that. So you know, these horses, you treat them like one of your household. You know, I mean, they're my best friends, and you know, I dang sure I've never had a team like this that I felt like that about, you know. And I'm always good to my horses, but these ones, when they're making a living for you and they're doing good, you step it up on your game too, and take a little better care. That's why I put that different saddle on him. So he, you know, I used to have a saddle on him, and you know, it fit, but not really fitting. And when Brian showed me how to fit these saddles, it was like, gosh dang, what was I doing to my horses? What would have them other horses been if I would have put the right saddle on them? Because when they started using these saddles, and just, I mean, I really think they've worked out of they've almost worked some of their soreness out themselves, you know, just because they feel good and they don't hurt, you know, and they run freer, and it's a very amazing, you know. If you're not a believer before, it's not something that happens overnight either. It's, you know, you have to try it for a while, and it's something that you need to give a chance, you know, because I mean, when I first come here, it wasn't like, it's just like, hey, gosh dang, let's just move this back here, you know, or do this, because it sure seems funny at first, you know. I mean, everybody's been saddling on the shoulder for years. Why would you move it back, you know? I mean, but there's a reason for it, and it does work.